Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the online classroom for Project Return. This is Miss Madison. Now today we are starting a whole new week and we are going to be honoring our World Book Day on April 23rd by making some bookmarks. We're going to be making one using more collage elements, things around the house, anything that you can find from magazines, printouts, colored paper, stickers, anything you got. Then we're going to be making another one that if you don't have anything you can cut up, you can just draw using basic shapes and shouldn't feel intimidated by it if you don't like to draw. Now for your materials, you're definitely going to need some collage elements, but that's going to vary depending on what you have. I love to scrapbook, so I had a lot of scrapbooking, little cardboard pop-outs and stuff like that. But it could be anything from a magazine, that's what I cut a lot of stuff out from as well. Printouts, anything that you have like that. You're definitely going to need a ruler, a pencil, some packaging tape so we can do some DIY lamination, some scissors, and some glue. You're also going to need some cardstock like how I have here. Now with my ruler I am marking off, I'm going to mark off enough for 3 because I'm going to be making 2 and then I'm making a third one just in case I mess up at all. I'm going to be making them 2 inches wide by 6 inches in length. And I'm marking them in a way that they're going to be right next to each other, so it's going to make it a lot easier for me to cut them out. So what I'm doing is now I'm marking my bottom 6 inches down, and I'm going to be marking it on my left side, and then I'm going to be marking it on my right side as well. That way I can do my best to get a straight line as possible, and also making sure when I'm lining it up to the edge of my paper, I am using the first dash instead of the edge of my ruler. If you use the edge of your ruler, just be aware that you are using the edge of your ruler to measure so that you consistently use it for your other measurements so that they are all the same. And I also use the edge of my ruler to line it up to the side of my paper to also double check that I'm getting it as straight as I possibly can. Once I get that straight line down the bottom, I'm going to do a very similar thing to line up my straight lines going down. Those are my vertical lines. And making sure that I can get it as straight as I possibly can so that they're not too wobbly and too weird. And once I have all 3 of them lined up, I'm going to cut them out and then I will have all 3 all done and ready to go. Now that we have our 3 bookmarks all cut out, we're going to start cutting out the collage elements for our collage bookmark. Now I definitely wanted to keep with a more library book theme, and luckily I had a magazine perfectly for the Oldsmar City Library. I spent a lot of time there as a kid, so this is definitely a lot of fun, just cutting out different elements and different fun parts to it. Now, like I said, this is kind of where it varies up to what you have on hand. But an important thing to remember with collage is starting from the background up. You don't necessarily have to fit everything around each other. They can overlap and create a lot of good dimension and depth the more that you overlap them. I wanted to create some words too, so I definitely had to mess around and work with finding some of the ones that would fit on there. But when I started gluing them down, one helpful tip that I have is that if you have a phone or something that could take a picture, I took a picture of it before I started gluing it down so that I could still have an idea of what it looked like. So as I was putting on all these little elements, I would know where they went. And then as I finished up, I just added some little drawing doodles and then I was all done. So for some of our finishing portions of this, after I glued down all of my collage elements, I trimmed the edges and make sure it all fits within the bookmark that we had cut out originally. And then I take my packaging tape once I'm all done and then I put one side down, sticky side down, making sure I'm rubbing out any of the bubbles that might be forming around those cardboard stickers because they're sticking out a little bit more and more 3D. And then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. I would say leave a little bit more space on the side for your tape because we are going to be cutting it out and trimming the sides a little bit. Leave a little bit more space even than what I left because I am going to have to end up going over it a second time because I didn't leave as much space there on that first side as I probably should have. So just keep that in mind that we are going to need a bigger amount. And once we have flipped it over and we've put that other side of the packaging tape down, it's really going to seal our bookmark in and make sure that anything that we've glued on top of it stays there and that nothing stains our bookmark, anything makes it dirty, and just seals it in really well. And then once I have it all sealed in with my tape, I'm going to do my best to run my finger over it and rub out any of the bubbles that are forming, and then I'm going to trim off all that excess tape hanging around. Now, like I said, this is kind of like our DIY version of laminating it, so it does have a little bit of the lines running through because, we don't have tape that runs quite big enough to cover the space that we need. But this is a good thing to do in the place of it. You can do the same thing with regular Scotch tape, it just might take you a little bit longer and the hold might not be quite as much, but you can still do it that way. And then once I'm done, just to clean it up a little bit, I am rounding the edges just to make it look just a little bit cleaner. And then once I'm done with that, I am all done with this first bookmark. Now, if I had a hole punch, I would say you could use a hole punch on the top and string some yarn, something on top so it has the tassel hanging off, but I unfortunately do not have a hole puncher here. But that is an option if you want to take it a step further. Now we're going to look at our second version. Just using some pen and marker, we are going to make our drawing version of a bookmark. Now we've talked a few times about our basic shapes and our basic forms. This one is going to be based heavily around our basic rectangle or squared form. Just making a rectangle over and over again, varying sizes and widths, lengths. You got it. We're just going to start by stacking up a few of those, and that's going to be a lot of our spines of our books. Sometimes to give it maybe a little bit more of a dramatic effect or maybe visual appeal, I offset some of my books so it looks like they're really stacked up. It's a large number of books you're waiting for to top over. Thin books, thick books, you got it. Just add some diversity in it and it'll make it a little bit more varied, a little more interesting to look at. Now once you have our basic outline of our rectangles all sketched out, I'm going to go in and add a few more details to make them look a little bit more like books. Once again, these are just using simple lines and shapes. I'm adding some details to the spine, like some vertical lines going down, almost like there's ridges coming out. Or maybe if they were some sort of infographic or binders, if there were names on the side, I put some blocks where maybe some words might be for some books. I'm not trying to get super detailed with it, I'm just continuing to make other rectangles of varying sizes. And just to add a little bit more visual interest really. You don't have to do it to every single book, and I would encourage you to vary it up. Vary up which one gets the vertical lines, which gets the horizontal lines, maybe some get none. And just kind of have fun decorating some of your spines of your books. Once I was all done drawing out in pencil is when I went over in my drawing pen, and then once I am done going over the lines, I might maybe vary up some of the line thicknesses. We talk about line weight sometimes. I might add a few more details in there, and then once I have all of the extra lines, any extra value I might want to add, I'm going to erase those background pencil marks and start coloring. Now here on the left, what I did is on that third bookmark, I decided I was going to use it to see how my markers were going to show up against that colored paper and against that cardstock. Especially using markers, I wasn't sure how it was going to absorb, so I wanted to kind of swatch them and double check before I used them. I am using a color palette that is mainly all close together. We would call this an analogous color scheme, because all of these colors, my yellow greens, my greens, and my blue greens are positioned next to each other on the color wheel. That's what makes them analogous. Now, as I am laying down color, how I'm kind of thinking about it is my bottom portion, I want it to have my darker values. My darker values are more of my blue, greens, and my greens. And then as I travel upwards, I'm going to introduce more of my medium values, I think more of my yellow green is what I'm considering my medium value. And then introducing some of my darker yellows, my lighter yellows as I get to the top. And now that I am done coloring it, I'm going to do the same exact thing that I did to my first one, laying down some of that tape. It's going to be a lot easier because this one is flatter and doesn't have any of those 3D elements sticking out. I'm going to round the edges, and then I am all done with both of my bookmarks. I hope if reading is something that you like to do and that you have access to it, you are taking this time to enjoy everything that literature has to offer, and that you will continue to enjoy our World Book activities this week. Alright, see you guys for the next one. Bye.